When it comes to selecting typefaces for your designs, you should be asking yourself two crucial things. Firstly, where is the typeface going to be on your design itself? Is it a body text typeface? Maybe it's for a heading or potentially a subheading. Each of these three areas on a design will likely require different thought and different action in regard to typeface choice. For a heading, you might want to use a bold, impacting typeface, where the body text might focus more on legibility and functionality, just as an example, of course. Then, you want to consider the tone of your design's message and the audience. Is the tone of the message playful, possibly suitable for a children's toy packaging design? Or perhaps, is the tone geared towards a horror movie poster? So then maybe a typeface style more sinister, more creepy would work better. Actually, yeah, probably would. Understand how each typeface has a personality, and then match that personality to the message and the audience of your design. Again, we're going to look into this more at the end of the course when we put everything into practice. So once you have a typeface for each part of your design, and hopefully you're keeping fonts down to 2-3 max, it's time to consider hierarchy. First, consider size. This is an easy but a crucial method for hierarchy. So on a magazine layout, headlines are often larger than subheadings or body text. That's pretty obvious, right? But the size difference immediately communicates hierarchy and allows the viewer to read the hook or the important material first. And then it takes them on their journey to the next part of the typography, which will be smaller in size. If you look at Apple's website, the product names are bolder versions of the same typeface below, and this creates, you know it, hierarchy. The viewers recognize this first and they see it as more important. And then we have color on your typography, which again can create hierarchy. The price of a product on a website might be a totally different color to the other text, and this helps it stand out and seem just more important. So, the most obvious approach is to pair fonts using contrast. They do say opposites attract after all, so yeah. The Vogue magazine often pairs high contrast serif fonts for headlines with clean and modern sans serif fonts for body text. And that works simply because they contrast each other. So like we did when we determined the tone or the emotion earlier, think about the logo's tone, and this will help you pair fonts with it. So with the Airbnb branding, on their marketing materials, you often see a friendly but an approachable sans serif font paired with a custom designed script font, and this is to convey warmth and personality. This pair match the overall motion and tone of the brand, and it's a well thought out solution on the designer's part. Now if you found one typeface you like for a design and you know it's going to work, just use two weights from that font family. In the Helvetica font family, combining Helvetica Bold for headings with Helvetica Regular or Light for body text creates a clean and a professional design, and it's really quick and easy to do. For this, you first should know where the focal point on your design is. Now this might be an image, an object, or it could even be a huge section of typography. The focal points can use white space to emphasize it, alongside things like size and contrast. It's completely up to you how you make it a focal point. And from there, lead them to the first section of typography. Unless, of course, your focal point was a large word or a phrase, in which case it will be going to the second section of typography. Now you can lead the viewer from your focal point by using white space and proximity to make the typography stand out and have room to breathe. Now it might be a heading or a subheading, it depends on the design you're working on, of course. Think of strategic ways you can use white space to enhance the readability and organize information across your entire design. Align text consistently, unless you're working on a design that aims to break all kinds of rules, which we will consider later. But remember also to use hierarchy throughout. Having typography and text on my designs, I do use the optical tracking setting most of the time. That's simply because more often than not, it does look best. Take a step back and gauge whether or not you have enough leading as well. Basically, that's the space between each line of your text. If you have two separate sections of typography that are in some kind of way linked to each other, maybe you have two quotes from one person or something like that, consider a close proximity so the viewer can visually see they share a relationship. But here's something important to remember. If your design brief is serious and formal, maybe let's say a high-end furniture brochure, then your typography layouts are going to be proper, ultra consistent and neat. However, if you're working on something that is less serious and maybe non-conformist, you might want to experiment with irregular typography layouts, having words partially hidden behind design objects, have parts of the lettering pass over the bleed edge, and use variable fonts and so on. At this point, I would suggest leaving your design for 1 to 2 hours and then return with fresh eyes. Ask yourself if you now, as the viewer, go on the journey around the design that you, the creator, intended. Is the typography legible? Does it fall in line with the mood and the tone of the brief of the design message? Yeah, these are the questions you should be asking at this point. So here's our starting design, and as you'll notice, we have one area of typography to work with at the moment. And this is actually going to be my focal point on this design. So, if we think about the content we looked at in the course so far, we might want to consider what this first bit of typography actually is. Now, what is it? So if this is a focal point, then it probably should be striking and obvious. So, we can claim this will be a large heading. And firstly, I just want to justify the text to the left edge, or in other words, a line to the left edge. But here's the question, is this text bold enough for a focal point and large heading? I mean, it probably would serve its purpose as it is right now, but I think we can improve things. The vibe or the mood of this design is modern and it's aimed at younger, trendy people. And so the typeface selection should obviously adhere to that and conform with visual languages. And so this here would work pretty well as it does fall in line with that sort of mood or that kind of tone. Also, notice how this focal point typography is in the complete center of the design, and this will help the viewers gravitate to this instantly and directly. But we can do one crucial thing here. Let's add some hierarchy of color to emphasize the word new and just to simply add some visual interest to the design. Right, so let's move to the next section of typography. Here we have a subheading and some body text. Now both of these will be smaller than the focal point, and that's because we want the viewer to not confuse this typography with the focal point visually speaking. The typeface choice here isn't the same as the typeface for the focal point, which again allows the focal point to stand out more, but the typeface here is still modern and it's still trendy to some extent, just not exactly similar. And at the moment, I'd say that these two white areas of typography are a bit too far apart, and so the viewer might not mentally link them together, even though they are meant to be considered linked. So let's just go ahead and move them closer and increase that proximity. We already have good hierarchy in size and boldness between the subheading and the body text here, but we can play around with the color a little bit to create hierarchy between these two sections even further. And so for the subheading, we can sample a green from somewhere else on the design for consistency. For the third section of typography, we have a secondary subheading which is slightly smaller again. And this will lead on to where the viewer finishes their journey on this design, which is the clickable button at the bottom. We can then add some extra typography for decoration, and as you can see, thinking about headings, subheadings and body text while considering the tone and the mood, and then implementing hierarchy really helps us to apply typography quickly and easily on our design.